Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
Welcome to Off the Track on Wisp Sports Radio, episode 11. Off the Track is about flat track roller derby, featuring exclusive interviews. I'm Mick Swagger, and at Wisp Sports, we believe that women in sport deserve equal coverage. Thank you for joining me on this new show all about roller derby. Off the Track podcast is hosted by me, Mick Swagger. My pronouns are they, theirs. Off the Track features interviews of coaches, players, former players, business owners, officials, announcers, and fans of flat track roller derby. We can be found on Wisp Sports Radio. Today's episode is being recorded on the lands of the Multnomah and Chinookwawa nations in Portland, Oregon. It is also part 2 of our Allyship workshop from RollerCon. Team Indigenous hosted a few workshops, and this one specifically, Mary Fagdalene and I shared our personal journey navigating what it means to be an ally to POC, while recounting our personal journey as skaters for VRDL. I'd like to welcome Bon to the show.
Hello, babe. Hello, everybody.
Thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome.
It's about time.
I know, seriously. This is episode 11, and this is the first time you've asked me to, actually be on the show. So, apparently I'm the love of your life, but...
You were in episode 10, part 1.
Yeah, kind of. Yep. All right. I'll give you that.
So this is part 2 of our allyship workshop, and we've decided to re-record as the time ran out when we were at RollerCon, and we kind of sped through the end of it. And so we felt like we didn't really do the job that we had visioned. So we're going to re-record it today. And
I feel like we should let people know that we're re-recording, because we also spent our entire night last night recording this, and we decided that it wasn't good enough, and now it's Monday night and we're recording again.
I feel like that's an overshare, but that's okay.
This will be a problem throughout this whole podcast.
Perfection isn't achieved in one go. Just to recap a little bit about the last episode, we went over a lot of different terms, and we're going to be revisiting some of those vocabulary terms. So I encourage you, if you haven't listened to part 1 of the Allyship workshop, you should stop right now and turn this podcast off and listen to part 1, because this second bit's not going to make sense without it, without that context. Also, just as a quick recap, I'll kind of take you through the story a bit. Or how should we recap that?
Yeah, I can do a really quick recap.
Right.
So we talked about early in the season, Mick was experiencing microaggressions. And given they're something I haven't really been familiar with as a white person, Mick did some work on educating me and helping to see what those are. You were experiencing bullying from a skater on the team. There was an escalation of that bullying where that person tried to physically assault you at an after party after a roller derby tournament. And towards the end of the first episode, we talked about a really big mistake of mine where I gaslit Mick by asking her what her part was in how that night unfolded. Then we travelled home together and we talked about restorative justice, and that was, for me, a really large turning point, I think, of breaking with white solidarity and stopping listening to voices from my teammates that were framing Mick as a problem, and listening to my partner on what was actually going on for you, Mick. So I think that was kind of where we left off. Can kind of talk about what happened from there.
Yeah. So from there, I wrote a letter to our executive committee because it was apparent that the steps of trying to sort out the problem myself, like following policy, so sorting it out yourself, and asking your leadership to help you solve these kinds of problems, was not working. In fact, the situation seemed to be escalating in nature up until that point. So I decided to write a letter and ask for mediation, which then became the Comedy of Errors in a lot of different ways. I was advocating for myself. I was very thorough with the history that skater and I had, including previously to myself being on the team, including coaching the year that I was coaching. We had there was a few conflicts, mostly because I had to deliver bad news because I was in a leadership position. And I believe that, the leaders at the time were kind of tired of dealing with this person. They were a bit difficult. And so they asked the new person to do that, which I did because, that's part of your responsibility as a leader. But that created some tension. And there was some tension when I was deciding whether or not to join the team, to skate with the team during the 2016 season at a what is it called? Like a training derby fest. And that happened in front of friends, international friends, and felt a bit hard and embarrassing, to be honest. So I just detailed all of that and was really honest about it and just asked, you know what, this conflict isn't solving itself. I don't know how you're meant to, as someone that is being bullied or attacked in any way, I don't know why it's our responsibility to solve these things. But I asked for my community to back me, and I asked for the principles of restorative justice to be used, which meant that our community came to the table and we worked out something together to solve it, because it just felt frustrating. And I just read back kind of some of the emails that went back and forth. I mean, I was bounced through 2 skater advocates, through the XCOM, through Skate Victoria, which is the governing body of VRDL and of many derby leagues in Australia. And it just felt like it was this, a game of mousetrap. You're just constantly being met with an obstacle at every point. And nothing was being solved. And in fact, it was creating an antagonistic environment where behavior was just escalating because that person was feeling frustrated or attacked, or I don't know. What do you think was going on, Bonnie? What are the dynamics?
Well, you asked for restorative justice, and what the league proceeded with was punitive justice. So that person was suspended for 2 weeks from training, and to be honest, that was a glorious 2 weeks. And then you were told that the matter was resolved. And
I had no idea that person was punished whatsoever. I just knew they were gone from practice and felt relief.
Yeah. But it wasn't what you asked for. What you asked for was mediation, because for you, that was a way of actually resolving something and actually being 2 adults coming together to figure out why there was such a breakdown in relationship.
And I've been in that situation before where I've been a jerk to somebody and have had to resolve it ourselves and have to be humble and admit your mistake and solve a situation. I've never been in a situation where someone refused to do that.
Yeah.
And where everyone in the community turned their eyes away and pretended nothing was going on.
Yeah. So, there were two steps to that mediation. When it went through the league, it became apparent that there wasn't really anybody skilled enough to do that. And then when it went to Skate Vic, you were given a mediator who seemed like they were going to do something and then didn't.
I really felt like what was going on in that environment, behind closed doors, behind me knowing anything that was going on, what I felt is that skater was being supported. They were being supported by my leadership. They were being supported by the mediator coming back and telling me, oh, they're not able, I don't think that they're stable enough to have mediation. You're just going to have to come up with some support plans for yourself at practice while they deal with their stuff, and maybe we'll be able to have mediation in the future.
I remember when the mediator came back with that, and I think I saw red. Like, for me, like, I've reflected on this quite a bit. Like, why the hell was it so hard for you to get mediation and to go through a process that is a bloody good process? And I think there are a couple of things, and it goes back to some of the stuff we talked about in episode 1. So we mentioned microaggressions and the way that Mick's body language was read, and people having difficulty seeing that she was in distress. So they interpreted her as being angry. And secondly, the person that Mick was in conflict with cried a lot.
Do you think that me also being, like, writing letters and being very thorough and speaking and advocating for myself, because I've learned how to do that, do you think that that was also seen as manipulation in some way? I just thought of that. I'm sorry.
By them?
Yeah, like I was trying to manipulate a process or something?
I don't think it was seen as manipulation. I think you were always seen as the powerful person because you are able to articulate yourself. And so, like, as I was saying, that the other person that you're in conflict with didn't have those kinds of skills. And when was confronted, there were a lot of tears. And I'm not knocking anybody for crying. Like, anybody that knows me that's possibly listening to this podcast will probably have a chuckle because they'll know that I'm a massive crybaby and a big oversharer. Like, I think crying is good. But I also think there are certain instances where crying is manipulation.
Oh yeah, white women like weaponize their tears all the time.
Yeah, and so what that reinforced was that person being seen as a victim, and you again being seen as somebody that actually did hold power, potentially angry, which you were, and it was valid. But that was incredibly frustrating because it stopped moving forward in any way, and it stopped you actually receiving any kind of justice because people never perceived you as needing help, whilst you were the person asking for mediation to help with a situation. And that constant flip that happened was infuriating. And, you know, like you said before, our teammates really rallied around that person. Like, you didn't really have much support at all on our team. And what I heard from our coach at the time was he had said to me, you know, after that punishment had happened, that people thought that you were trying to kick that person out of roller derby. And I remember hearing that and just being gobsmacked. And it was another moment of just being like, you do not see this person at all. Like, you don't understand what she's actually trying to do, and you consistently read her in a negative light as an aggressor, and this other person as being a victim that needs to be taken care of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So frustrating. But I don't know, like, the policy, it just benefit that person so much more. And like I said, I felt like I was in a game of mousetrap. It was just like, you know, I'd send an email, I wouldn't get anything back for 7 days. Meanwhile, I'm at practice 6 days a week with someone who's like intent to destroy my body.
Whilst also being told that roller derby is an aggressive sport. So people can't really tell if that's happening maliciously, despite the fact that that person had actually tried to hit you in a social situation. So it was just constant gaslighting.
And also admitted that to the skater advocate. They admitted that to the skater advocate. They admitted that to the mediator. They admitted that when they were confronted by those leaders, that they did in fact like try to harm me. So how is this policy? Why does it have so many holes in it? What is it about the policy that's built around, punitive justice versus restorative or transformative justice that is so harmful to our communities? It's a big question that I want you to think about as we continue to talk.
And like in the first episode, we gave a definition of racism that was both talking about racial bias, so how we perceive people, whether that's conscious or unconsciously in a negative way, but also how systems backs up systems of power, which is why, as we came to think about this stuff more, we actually used the language of racism, which was separate to what was happening with the bullying. But through that bullying instance and through the way that you were perceived and also the systems that actually blocked you from having any justice and any kind of healing and supported this white person at every moment is why, and also talking with our friend Nadi, who was also, I think, just affirmed it. It was just like, it was racist. And we were like, oh my God, it was racist.
Yeah.
That's, I guess, how we came to that conclusion, and why I think that's really important to talk about is that it's not a kind of situation where somebody is calling you a racial slur. It's not extreme right people saying, terrible things about Indigenous people or black people or anything like that. It happens in a very liberal, supposedly open sport like roller derby.
Yeah.
And those instances are happening everywhere.
A lot of people that are queer and white believe that they can't be racist just because they're queer.
Yeah, well, they understand injustice through a certain lens and they're blind to it because of their whiteness, because of our whiteness and my whiteness. I'm for sure blind to these dynamics at times. Always learning. So, do you want to add anything about the mediation?
No, I think I want to add more about that racism piece, because I really, after talking to people since then, they really didn't understand that they were upholding racism, and actually became quite defensive about it. And only a couple people are now talking to me and realizing, I actually need to examine this because it's true. And it's probably because the context of what the shit fire that is happening in politics in the world right now is that people are confronted with it more and more. But, I learned to code switch at a young age, and I know how, I need to act when I'm at school. I know how I need to act when I'm at work. You put on a different voice. You put on a different type of vocabulary as opposed to when I'm home on the res with my family. You figure it out pretty quickly. And I didn't know how to do that in Australia. And so it made it even more awkward. It made me feel more awkward because I wasn't sure how to fit in. I didn't understand the extent of what tall poppy syndrome meant until I witnessed it. It's insidious. It's at every level in Australia, and it's really weird. I didn't understand the extent of, what is it called when people are like nice to your face? Passive aggressiveness. It's so, like, I understand passive aggressiveness when people are trying to be rude, but not when people
trying to be polite.
No, like in America, people are passive aggressive in like a really sarcastic way. It's like they're doing it because they want you to see it. Where in Australia, they're doing it so subtly because they don't want you to see it.
Yeah.
They don't want you to see that they're actually being nasty, and they're probably saying something completely different behind what they say to your face. And I don't know, it's like this really weird part of the society that I just had a really hard time navigating. And yeah, it's just confusing, and I think that is important to talk about, or at least to point out, and especially if anyone from VRDL or the people that I skated with are listening to this. Like, I straight up didn't understand you probably as much as you didn't understand me.
Yeah. So, to finish off that piece, we finished out the season. Mick. Mick is way stronger than I am, and like a few weeks out from chats.
A lifetime of oppression, Bonnie. So yes, I may be more resilient in these sorts of instances, but it doesn't mean that I bounce back from them.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, anyway, we made it through the season. We finished it together. We played our games. I was bloody chuffed at the result, even though people were so disappointed with coming third. But I was just, by that stage, I wasn't really playing for a team. I was playing for us just finishing the season with our heads held high.
Yeah, and also, you know, like, I couldn't engage with my teammates at any point.
Yeah.
I didn't hang out outside of practice. I didn't, like, gear up and, you know, gear down with everybody. That was really hard. We didn't hang out with anybody at the after parties because I knew that inevitably some bad stuff would happen, some negative interactions. And I just stopped being around people. And so it just became like kind of a job almost.
Yeah.
And so we did finish. And we got married the day after.
Oh yeah, we got married the day after. It's going to be our 2-year wedding anniversary very soon. It's exciting. We'll be in New Orleans at a roller derby tournament. What the hell were we thinking?
Bench coaching.
And then we went to Standing Rock, and the derby community really supported us, particularly financially, to be there. And that was beautiful. And again, for me, there was like another moment of seeing Mick, because it was the first time that I saw her in her context. We were, you know, predominantly with Native people there. I was constantly feeling unsure of myself and whether I was saying the right thing or how to interpret situations. So it was definitely a shoe is on the other foot moment, minus people being nasty to me.
Yeah, people were so kind.
But still recognizing that I was in a space that was unfamiliar to me, which I don't really experience very often as a white person, living in colonized societies.
Were there any realizations that you had during that time? Parallels, maybe?
I think it just reinforced how glad I was to be finished playing derby, and that we were going to move on to other things in our lives. But I think particularly seeing how you were honoured there. Like, we were gifted a blanket by somebody, which was a really special thing, because they saw the work that Mick was doing, like serving people in the kitchen.
And you.
Yeah, yep.
I think people also recognize that it was like basically what normal people call a honeymoon.
That was so romantic. It was really cold, so there was a lot of snuggling, but it was very public. But yeah, seeing Mick in her context was so different. And I just saw her open up. I saw you just breathe again and just be, you were comfortable.
Well, I
you
could
were
finally
happy.
relax.
Yeah.
You know, like I think it took me like a full day to realize I didn't have to be so guarded.
Just a day?
Or probably, yeah. I mean, I remember serving people and I was like saying hi to people, and this like tall, sweet boy walked through the line, Marcus. And I was like, hi, how are you? You know, kind of thing. And he just like gave me this giant smile. He was like, hi sister, thanks so much for the food. And then I was just like, I'm with my people. I don't have to, I can just be myself. And it was such a big feeling because I realized like for that whole year I just hurt and felt horrible.
Yeah.
It's like breaking up from a bad relationship.
Yeah, and one that had been a really positive, wonderful thing for you. Like roller derby
For many years.
far more important to you than me, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that was even the year that I coached Rainy City at playoffs and then came and played playoffs the next week. I was trying so hard to have a positive experience and it just was so darkened.
Yeah. So then we didn't really talk about it. I mean, you and I talked about it, but...
I didn't talk to anybody about it.
That's true, you didn't talk. I probably talked sometimes in bitter snippets to some people, but I don't think anybody really understood or we really actually fleshed out why it actually felt so dark and so horrible and why we left and never looked back. Like, never. Until our friend Nadi had an experience also at VIDL where she felt entirely tokenized.
Yeah, International Women's Day. The VRDL All-Stars were asked to speak on speak about diversity in sport?
Yeah.
And being how the only POC that was on the team the previous year left under duress, they went to this panel and the night before realized, like, well, we're talking about diversity, but we don't have any POC
Probably
with
just
us.
realised they're all white.
And asked her to go. And she, you know, you have to listen to her episode. She explains it. I think it's like, you know, May 3rd, May sometime this past year. But it's a really poignant episode where she talks about being tokenized and understanding that she was being taken advantage of in the midst of it and really wanting some support and not knowing how and just crying. Like, we just cried on Skype many times together. Sorry, Nadi, to expose you like that, but...
Nadi's a softie.
It's a horrible feeling to feel that way. And I felt like we should write on her behalf. Not on her behalf.
She asked us to. So Nadi essentially orchestrated a call-in. She asked the league, she said, we have a racism problem. We need to do something about it. Some people got together to organise some cultural training and have a facilitator come through and do that with them, which is wonderful. But Nadi asked if Mick and I would write something to talk about that because they're not the only people that have struggled with racism in VIDL and certainly not in roller derby. There's been many, as Mick has found out since this has been exposed, how many.
Yeah, every one of them has messaged me.
And so we wrote, and I wrote about it trying to frame things to a white audience, thinking about how can they hear Mick? How can I preface this in a way that means Mick doesn't actually have to censor herself and do the work of trying to bring white people along, but can actually just say how she felt. and what happened, and for me to do that work of framing it. So I basically talked about if you're a group of like all women and genderqueers, if you're one of those people in a room full of men, and things that happened that were misogynistic, you would understand that. You would tell your friends. We'd all be up in arms about it. And so trying to put people in that place of like, imagine you're in this situation, that straight white dude. That's the kind of like blindness you are coming into this situation. So be open. And this is like an opportunity to learn even when it's uncomfortable. And then you shared.
And then I shared. In my letter, I just reread it tonight, and it made me angry again. And it's good to get rid of that anger, because I just held it for such a long time. I kept it in, and I knew that there was going to be a really wonderful facilitator there. Bonnie told me how they were framing their letter, and I just thought, I get the chance to actually tell people how they made me feel. Mm-hmm. And that's not usual. I don't usually do that. But
have you ever done it?
Yeah, I'm sure. Sometime. I don't know. Maybe not. But, I did. I let them know how I felt, that I felt belittled, and I repeated back many of the phrases that they used towards me. Mm. Maybe you should smile more. Being one of those.
Your teammates feel like you're aggressive.
Yeah. All kinds of ridiculousness. Yeah. And I, compared myself and my behavior to, because the other thing is that I'm not sure if we mentioned this previously, but one of the captains, basically like denied that, they were racist, and I just view Mick as an American, and I don't view myself as an American, so I don't know how the hell she viewed me as an American. But there was another American on the team, and they got treated very differently than me.
Yeah.
And they have a very different temperament than me, and I don't want to go into that, I guess.
I think we talked about that in episode 1. Maybe we didn't. Maybe we talked about that in Vegas.
Yeah, but essentially, we were treated differently, and it's frustrating, because I was able to point that out, and that felt really like I was able to release it in a sense. But it's also scary, and that, was really difficult to do, and I became physically ill after this. I got really sick. With a congestion, and wasn't able to really I wasn't able to do any exercise for weeks.
Oh, that didn't go away for months.
And it was completely I just knew I'm holding all of this anxiety because I was a part of this call-in, and I haven't heard a freaking word from anybody.
Yeah.
From anybody that is in charge. We heard from Nadia, of course. We heard from a couple of friends. But that was it. Yeah. Nobody that we skated on those rosters with did we hear from. Mm-hmm. And they were present at that meeting where that letter was read to them. And, a month goes by, and then another month goes by, and it's Big O, and it's time to go support friends at Big O, and we had made plans to go and to cheer on Angel City and other folks that were there, and to pick up a couple of our friends that were coming from Australia. They both happened to have left this season, left the team, for the same sorts of reasons, which was mentioned in the last episode, but I just couldn't go. I just felt really anxious and really scared and unsure of myself. And I haven't felt that at tournaments. I go to derby tournaments and I'm reunited with my friends. Mm. And I've coached all over the world. And that's a very fortunate, I've had a very fortunate life the past few years to be able to do that and to be able to make the friendships that I've made. And tournaments are like the best because I see my friends from all over the place in one place. When normally it's like I see my Rainy City friends here in Manchester, or, you know, my US friends here, or Australian friends in another place. Like, everyone's in a different spot, but at Champs, everyone's together. Or, you know, at Big O especially, everyone's together. And it becomes like this really fun environment. And I just felt the opposite. I knew I was going to just feel anxious and want to hide. And that's not me. I'm pretty social in those spaces.
Yeah, I'm the one that wants to hide. I'm the introvert.
And I want to watch every game, and I want to, like, cheer everybody on and have a good time. And I knew that wasn't going to happen. And so I just, you know, we told Tui, like, I'm not going to go. I can't go.
Well, wasn't that simple.
I know.
I think you told me first that you were feeling so anxious and you didn't want to go. And I think I had messaged Tui and mentioned, we're, you know, just as a heads up, we may not make it. And she did the foolish thing, I think, of asking me what's up. And if someone asks me what's up, like I said earlier, I am a total oversharer and I will tell you what's up. And so I told her what had happened, why we didn't want to go. And it was probably the first time I'd really talked about it and told somebody. And then I think we all talked about it on Skype. And she was furious. And, like, Tui has her own baggage from VRDL. But hearing you be treated by them in that way, and I remember her saying, like, I just cannot handle you being pushed out of roller derby after you've contributed so much, and was outraged. And that felt bloody nice. Like, finally, someone is actually outraged, because we felt like it was really crap.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we'd sort of made jokes about if we go, we'll, like, you know, wear shirts about VRDL being racist or something, and then we decided not to go. And you particularly, you were like, if some kind of call-out exposure thing is going to happen, there's no way I want to be there for it. Like, it's way too uncomfortable, and I don't want to be in the centre of that.
No, and exactly as I predicted would happen, happened, which is, you know, Tui got a lot of props for the call-out. People were, like, really really glad that she did it. They felt like she was supporting people that were bullied. You know, they took it as something personal for themselves, which is great, and it became, you know, something bigger than just VRDL, which is exactly why we're doing this podcast as well. Like, it's the whole point is because this happens everywhere. And when the messages started rolling in from people dealing with this stuff, like, it's heartbreaking to hear all over the derby world, like, from every country, you're getting messages about this happened in my league too. And we just watched the social media roll in of all these comments. And, you know, the only people that contacted me were POC folks, like, really trying, you know, giving me support and understanding exactly where I was coming from. And my response, I think there's two parts in here. One is during the call in, I had a really wobbly time where I didn't want to do it. And I was scared. Mm-hmm. And you were, like, really pushing me, which led to, like, one of our biggest fights. Because I really didn't want, I think it was, like, the night before, and I just wanted to, like, be out with my friends in Barcelona and not give a rat's behind about this thing. And you were like, I don't understand why you'd go this far and not send it. Yeah. And I just was like, I just lost it. Was like, you are going to write that letter and people are going to congratulate you, pat you on the back, praise you. I'm going to write that letter and I'm going to be an angry brown woman. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. Yeah. And I was worried, and I was worried that was going to happen at the call out too. Mm. That I would just get, like, you're an angry person. And a little bit, yes. And people really fixated on who was calling out and how it was done, and not the actual freaking racism that was being exposed, not the actual bullying that was being exposed.
Yeah.
They fixated on the method of exposure, which I think says a lot about white fragility.
Yes. And really important to say, like, that call out didn't come from nowhere. That call out came after a very heartfelt, very, like, we poured so much into that call in, and it took such an emotional toll on, like, especially emotional, physical health toll. And it was met with nothing. It was met with silence. Like, we literally got 4 messages total from the whole league that was there. And nobody that we skated with. And it just felt like we'd given this precious gift of vulnerability, and it was met, I'm assuming, I still don't really know, but with a lot of white guilt, and definitely a lot of gaslighting by some people who were trying to deflect that. But I think for the majority of people it was probably guilt. And something I want to say about that is that I definitely feel white guilt. I feel it a lot, and at times it can feel incapacitating, but we have to move through it. Like, unless that actually leads us to action and doing something and, like, careful, considered response, it just becomes silence and complacency, and that makes you complicit in something that you actually might feel uncomfortable about. And, you know, so if there are folk that are still sitting in that, or for different situations are still sitting in that, do something about it.
Yeah, well, there was a quote about comfort, and I've been thinking about it a lot too, just in my own personal life, but I think specifically for this, I wrote it on a cardboard box the other day. When we were reading White Fragility, which, if you haven't picked that up, I'm not sure how many times we've mentioned it, but you should read it.
I think we mentioned it last night a lot, but we're not sharing that recording. This is the new one.
Stop with the
So it feels
oversharing.
like we've talked about it a lot.
So anyway, this book, White Fragility with Robin DiAngelo, I read bits in the beginning and bits in the end, because I think there's probably stuff that I don't actually need to read the whole thing. So as a POC, I suggest reading parts of it, because it felt validating. And this quote, especially validating in this, as this was happening. White comfort maintains the status quo, so discomfort is necessary and important. It's a very simple quote, but it's so true. Like, white comfort maintains racism.
Yeah.
Being complicit maintains white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be uncomfortable and work through something in order to break down that system. And if we've seen anything going on in the world around us in the last couple of years, is that we have to be agitators. We have to take action. You can't just watch things around you and think, well, I'm not doing it, so I'm not a part of it.
Yeah.
How many times do we have to repeat history as humans? We see this happen so many times in our modern history, especially, like really horrific things happening because we're complicit in them.
And what we saw a lot of afterwards was people feeling far more upset about their own reputation and, you know, really feeling wronged by that call out happening, because they're essentially worried about their reputations. And I think that overrode far more than actually looking at, like, being actually concerned about racism, and that that a person of colour had actually said to them, "You have done me deep harm, and you've perpetuated that in this space that is meant to be my safe space." And I think that, yeah, we saw a ton of white fragility, a ton of defensiveness. You know, looking at a lot of the social media stuff, it was really interesting to watch how, because, you know, you can see like how people share it and where it goes. And so I looked at like a lot of the different conversations, and it was so interesting watching white folk mostly focus on themselves and how they'd been bullied in roller derby, and POC folk mostly talk about racism. And I was like, so interesting, like what people are actually taking away from this. Because yes, like bullying like did happen, but for you, and that was harmful, but for you, I think it was racism that was like most deeply
damaging.
And
that's what a lot of people talked to me about after this workshop in Vegas, and after our POC panel. They talked about, I've experienced bullying, I've experienced like all of these negative things going on in my league, and now I see that it's the stem causes racism, and now I have words to put to it. But I want to read one more quote. I want to read this one, and I want to read it directly to the people that I skated with.
I'm the quotes guy.
I'm reading it.
I found the quote.
Shut up. But I want to read it to the people that I skated with, because I hope that someday you'll listen to this. I know that some of you are. And it's a quote by Audre Lorde. "I cannot hide my anger to spare you guilt, nor your hurt feelings, nor answering anger, for to do so insults and trivializes all our efforts. Guilt is not a response to anger, it is a response to one's own actions or lack of action. If it leads to change, then it can be useful, since it is then no longer guilt, but the beginning of knowledge. Yet all too often, guilt is just another name for impotence, for defensiveness, destructive of communication. It becomes a device to protect ignorance and a continuation of things the way they are, the ultimate protection for changelessness."
Yeah. So the last thing that we want to talk about to wrap this up is, well, I guess for me, to share something around, you know, I think for us as white folk, if you're white listening to this, it can be incredibly difficult to come to terms with the fact that you are complicit in a racist system. I am, and I think that for me it becomes a lot easier to be challenged about my racist patterns when I actually understand that I've been socialised into a system of white supremacy, and I'm the beneficiary of it, where Mick stands, she's oppressed by it. And so in that call out, what we're not saying to people is that you're a terrible Nazi, Ku Klux Klan, you know,
oh God, no,
terrible person like that. What we're talking about is white supremacy and how we're conditioned into it. Like, every single white person is a part of that. And the hope for me is that whilst this is a lifelong learning of dismantling racism, like personally in myself, and it's lifelong and ongoing because I'm constantly socialised into thinking other ways, that white is normal, that white is right, that it's easier for me to understand and listen to white friends. But we can actually do work around this, and that work is important. It's beautiful. It means that we can actually have like relationship with people because we have some understanding. We have less blind spots, and I really hope by this stage, it's quite a while now that call out happened, that some work is being done. by folk at VRDL, but by everybody else that's like tuning into this. There are places that we can go. So, yeah. Do you have anything you want to say before we finish? You kind of just opened a can of whoop ass by reading Audre Lorde.
No, thank you so much for being on this journey with me and recording this podcast and sharing our life, because it's not, it's exposing and it's scary.
Yeah.
And we have done a lot of work and we have a lot more to do.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining me.
Conversations from the world of women's sports. This is Wisp Sports Radio.
If you have any questions for me, or maybe I'll invite Bon back on, and if you have any questions for them,
If I'm lucky.
you can go to the Wisp Sports website, and there is a button widget called the Voice Bite app, and you can record a question and hashtag it Wisp Sports. Or I think if it's on the website, you don't have to hashtag it, but it will be fed back to me, and we will play your question, and I will answer it on my podcast. If you want to download the app, it's VoiceByte, VoiceByte. Record on that app using the hashtag WispSports, WISPSPORTS. For more conversations from the world of women's sport, subscribe to Wisp Sports Radio on your podcast app and visit wispsports.com for blogs, articles, and videos, where you'll also find show notes and links for this episode. You can join in the conversation by following us on social media at Wisp Sports, and by emailing us with any comments, questions, or suggestions at info@wispsports.com. Wisp Sports Radio can be found on any podcast app. Follow Wisp Sports on social media at Wisp Sports, and please give us a 5-star review on iTunes to help promote coverage of women in sport.